Every time you listen to music in stereo, or you're in a movie theater and the sound just washes over you, you're actually hearing the work of a man most people have never even heard of. Well, we're going to change that today. Let's dive into the incredible story of Alan Blumlein, the father of spatial audio.
But seriously, think about that for a second. When you're watching a movie and a helicopter seems to fly right over your head, or maybe you're playing a video game and you can hear footsteps creeping up behind you, how does that even work? How can sound come from places where there are literally no speakers?
Well, the answer, and this is wild, doesn't come from some tech lab in Silicon Valley. Nope. It comes from this right here, a patent filed all the way back in 1931. And it was all sparked by one simple, brilliant idea a guy had while watching one of the very first movies with sound. So, let's meet the man himself, Alan Dower Blumlein, the visionary engineer who completely changed the way we hear the world around us.
Blumlein wasn't just some inventor tinkering in a shed. He was a true polymath. He had this incredible knack for looking at these super complex problems and coming up with solutions that were just shockingly simple and elegant. He didn't just see a problem, He saw the deep physics behind it and would just build a whole system from scratch in his head.
And this way of thinking, it wasn't something he picked up in school. It seems like he was just born with it. His genius was obvious from a really, really young age. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's incredible. At 7 years old, he's taking apart and fixing the family doorbell. Then he just breezes through university, graduating with the highest honors in half the time it takes most people. And before he's barely out of his teens, he's already getting published in major technical journals. This wasn't just a smart kid. This was a mind running on a completely different operating system. So it was only a matter of time before that powerful intellect turned to a problem that most people didn't even realize was a problem: making recorded sound feel real. And that quest led him to his most famous invention, stereophonic sound.
And it all started with this one simple but profound observation. Okay, so picture this. It's 1931. Blumlein is at the movies with his wife. Back then, the sound just came out of one big speaker. So an actor would walk all the way across the screen, but his voice would just stay stuck in one spot. To Blumlein, this just felt wrong, totally illogical. And he famously declared, the sound should not follow the actor. And right then and there, sketched out the entire concept for stereo.
And this is where his genius just blows your mind. His solution was pure mathematical poetry. He figured, okay, you can use two mics angled just right to capture direction. Then you can encode both of those signals into a single groove on a record by cutting the walls at a 45-degree angle. And then you just need a simple circuit to shuffle those signals back into a left and a right channel. It was the whole system, from capture to playback, all thought up in one go. Now, here's the really crucial part. Blumlein didn't just invent, left and right speakers. What he really invented was a way to capture and recreate an entire two-dimensional soundscape. He called it binaural sound, but it's the direct ancestor of what we now call ambisonics. He essentially gave sound a sense of space. But here's the real kicker: stereo sound. This invention that literally changed music, film, everything. For him, it was just one patent. One of 128 patents he filed in his tragically short life. Oh yeah, his brain wasn't just wired for sound. He was a huge player in developing the UK's first completely electronic television system for the BBC. He made breakthrough advances in the optics for TV cameras. He even invented a thing called the Blumlein Bridge to make long-distance phone calls clearer. I mean, this guy was building the technological foundations of the 20th century. But then, the world plunged into war, and the focus of Blumlein's incredible mind had to shift to something much more urgent and much more secret. So he leaves his job at EMI, where he's making entertainment tech for the public, and moves to the top secret telecommunications research establishment. His new mission wasn't about sound systems anymore. It was about survival. He was tasked with creating advanced radar. His most critical invention during the war was the H-2S airborne radar. This thing was an absolute game changer. It let Allied bombers see the ground right through thick clouds or total darkness. It made navigation and bombing raids so much more accurate. In fact, Winston Churchill himself knew how important Blumlein was, considering him a strategic asset that was simply irreplaceable. But this kind of vital, high-stakes work,
it came at a tremendous price. When you're pushing the absolute limits of technology in the middle of a war, you and your team are right there on the front lines.
On June 7, 1942, Blumlein and his key engineers were up in a bomber testing that very H-2S radar system. During the flight, a single loose nut on an engine bolt caused it to fail, starting a fire that the crew just couldn't put out. The plane went down. There were no survivors. The loss of Blumlein and his team was considered so catastrophic to the war effort that Churchill himself ordered their deaths be kept an official state secret. He was terrified it would crush Allied morale and tip off the enemy.
And so, for years, his sacrifice went almost completely unknown. But his work, his genius, well, that never went away. In fact, you could say it's echoing louder today than it ever has. Just think about it. That stereo principle he patented way back in 1931, that's the bedrock of basically all audio you listen to. And his idea of capturing a 2D sound field, that's the granddaddy of the 3D spatial audio we have today in things like Dolby Atmos, in virtual reality, in augmented reality. The tech that feels so cutting edge and futuristic, its DNA goes right back to him almost 100 years ago. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? Alan Blumlein's mind didn't just make inventions, it literally pulled the future into the present. He wasn't just figuring out the next step, he was 10 steps ahead, accelerating whole eras of technology all by himself. Which leaves us with a pretty mind-bending thought, right? If the immersive tech we think of as brand new today was essentially figured out by one guy in the 1930s, it just makes you wonder, what other revolutionary ideas are being sketched out on a napkin somewhere, maybe in secret, right now, that are going to completely define the world of the 22nd century?